We've launched a program that we hope will address the funding issue for MoDOT, which I think all of us feel is a very, very real and current need. And as you know, the basis of this is a 1 cent sales tax, limited for a period of 10 years. Now, I think what we'd like to do is turn this over to you and see what types of questions that you might have about our plan. We know that it needs to be limited. We've done some work in terms of finding out what Missourians think they want. I know that the senator has been around the state, and we have a number of issues that obviously are going to have to be addressed. This is a starting point. It's going to be a conversation. We're not saying we have the final draft of this, but we are asking for input, and we're going to be studying it. The members of the commission, while we have not formally adopted this, have certainly discussed it among ourselves, and I think I can speak for every one of those. Please come on up. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. For those of you who don't know, this is Grace Nichols. She's vice chair, and I think you know the senator and the former senator. Anybody who doesn't, well, you haven't been around here too long. That's all I can tell you.
He's a recovering senator.
A recovering senator? Well, and you can be what a, however this works. At any rate, we're here to try to answer questions that you might have relative to what we have proposed. And at this point in time, I'd like to turn it over to the floor and see what questions you might have. We'll start with this gentleman up here.
Mr. Chairman, as you know, lawmakers are considering a number of options. There was talk just yesterday, in fact, of including highway funding in a rather broad and ambitious package of bonding, which would have other things in it, like mental hospitals and higher education facilities. Why a sales tax as opposed to bonding or some other form of funding?
Well, I think the way I would answer that is the question of what type of bonding would be used, how long would it go, because what we have in this state is an ongoing need for transportation funding. Usually with the bonding, what you do is you go out and you basically sell X number of dollars worth of bonds for a given period of time. Well, while that infuses money into the system for a period of time, it does not solve the long-run problems that we have. So my personal preference is to try to get at the heart of the problem, which is a sustainable, long-term fix for Missouri's transportation problems.
$7.5 billion over 10 years doesn't even touch I-70 or I-44, right?
No, that's not right. It doesn't touch I-44, but in the plan, we're setting aside approximately $1 billion to start a program that would address I-70 over about a 5-year period. Our thought is to bond a portion of the sales tax in order to produce a sufficiency of funds, along with funds that we will use from Amendment 3 to do the $1.5 to $1.6 billion that it's going to take care of I-70.
I thought I-70 was at 7.
I beg pardon?
Was the $7 billion number that was thrown around before 70 and 44 together?
No. There have been various estimates on what it would cost with respect to I-70. But the solution that I think is the most probable would be one that would cost something in the neighborhood of $1.6 billion.
What would that buy, sir?
That would buy an extra lane on, well, actually you would be rebuilding the entire road, but you would buy an extra lane in each way. And that would be one of the situations that you would find that you would prohibit trucks from driving in the third lane. And I have seen this done in a number of places in the United States, and it does increase traffic flow enormously and keep it much, much safer.
But it would not be the separate truck lanes that
No.
Mr. Rodden talked about at one time?
No. The price tag on that, as we looked at it, and as I recall from memory, was in the $4 to $5 billion range. And we simply don't have funds to do that. It's a wonderful concept, but unfortunately, we have, Senator, we can drive Fords, but we can't afford Lincolns.
Would this involve any new interstates that where some don't currently exist?
Well, we don't think that that's probable at this period of time. The way the process would work is that the various planning partners would decide what is needed in their area. It's pretty hard to envision building a new interstate with the funds that we're talking about here. Now, there may be some improvements on certain roads that could be brought up to interstate standards, but as far as a new interstate initiative, it isn't really contained in this thought process.
So we wouldn't see anytime soon an extension of 72, say, over to St. Joseph or something along those lines?
It would be hard to envision that.
And the proposal to do an interstate on 54 from Hannibal to Lebanon would also be not available?
Well, I guess I ought to answer it this way. You might be able to do parts of these over time, but the amount of funds that would be freed up or put into the system probably do not allow initiatives of that nature. Although, you're going to have to wait because the department is in the process of working on and getting input. So it's probably a little premature to say, well, this can't happen or that can't happen.
In your remarks an hour ago, you said this would create something like 250,000 new jobs. Are those permanent, sustained jobs, or when the tax goes away in 10 years, do the jobs follow?
No, actually, what I was making reference to, some of those are construction jobs, but others come about as a result of economic activity, which happens because of highways. And without question, in my experience, the transportation issue plays a big part in where people expand and where they locate. And so I think that's probably a very good number, and I think it's sustainable jobs.
Do you envision this going through the legislature, or see this as more of an initiative issue?
I think it would be best to go through the legislature personally.
Do you have a target date for the election? Are you looking at April of 14 or August or November, or to be determined?
Well, let's put it this way. If it goes through the legislature and it's a constitutional amendment, and if the governor does not call a special election, then it goes in 2014 in November.
You're looking at this as an amendment, not just a law that would raise the tax?
So it would be a constitutional amendment.
Why do it as a 10-year? Do you view that as something that would be renewed every 10 years then, or?
If we do our job properly, I think the citizens of Missouri may very well consider renewing it. I think as a taxpayer, I think the citizens of Missouri deserve some accountability, and a tax that goes on and on and on without any report card, I don't think is very desirable, and personally, I don't think I could support that. Other questions?
This legislature hasn't been too fond of tax increases. How will you persuade them otherwise?
We're not asking the legislature to do a tax increase. What we are asking the legislature to do is to allow the citizens of Missouri to vote on whether they wish to tax themselves for transportation.
But this legislature has been reluctant to do even those kinds of issues. I've heard lawmakers in both the House and Senate say, if I do that, then I'm supporting a tax increase, and I can't do that. So following up on Virginia's question, aren't you creating a mountain that's going to be hard to climb just to get it to the ballot?
You know, in this life, there are very few things that are easy. And certainly I didn't say that this would be easy. But I think the timing of this is such that people have had an opportunity to look at transportation, and the information that we're getting back as far as polling is concerned indicates that they think that we have done a good job in the pursuit of transportation, and that they felt like initially they could support something along these lines. Now, whether that stays true or not, whether the legislature will come through, all I can say is that we're going to work as hard as we can to try to represent the people of Missouri, because we think they deserve a vote on this.
Would this be roads and bridges only, or
No.
would some of the money be available for
No.
ports, airports, et cetera?
No, that's one of the things that we wish to insist upon, and that is, it is the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission. Transportation is more than highways. Highways are very important, but so are ports, and the other modes of transportation, aviation. So we want to have this available so that it could be used for whatever transportation needs are most vital. And remember that those are the needs that are going to be brought to the surface by the folks in our planning partners. It is not the commission who is going to dictate where this goes. We wish to listen to what the people want us to do and try to do it. I don't know what Sedalia needs, but Sedalia does.
So you say there would be a list prior to the election of the projects?
Absolutely.
But would you be bound by that? It wouldn't be part of the constitutional amendment, obviously.
No, that's true, but what we would suggest is that there be an accountability on an annual basis to say, okay, are you doing what you said you were going to do? And that report goes back to the legislature. And the ultimate stick on this is, if we don't do what we said we were going to do, this will never be renewed. It's dead. So we have every incentive to get this right.
Do we return to the annual transportation speech? Would that be part of the accountability, or just a written report?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how it will come out of the legislature as we go through. I would imagine that they probably would want both, but I can't speak for them. But there must be accountability in this package.
Has the commission voted on this proposal? Or
No,
how-
we have not voted on the proposal. I have polled the individual commissioners independently, and they support this, but the commission has taken no formal action.
Does the commission plan to take that step, or is that?
I can't speak for the commission. I don't know what their pleasure might be. My guess is that we're going to continue to go forward. I don't think that it's necessary, personally, for us to take a formal position on this. But if the rest of the commission feels that that would be desirable, then that's what we'll do.
Have you
So-
talked to the governor about this?
The governor has indicated several times at various points that he understands the importance of transportation. The governor has not made, to my knowledge, any formal pronouncements relative to the initiative. We have provided his staff with some advanced information, but that's as far as it's gone.
If the commission has not actually voted on this, how do we characterize who is proposing this? Is it Chairman Farber's proposal? Is it the department's proposal? Is it the commission's informally without a vote? Or did it just come down from the clouds?
If you wanted to put it that way, let's say that I initiated it, and if that makes you happy.
Can you give us some other examples of the projects that would be funded, although the list isn't nailed down?
No, I'm not in a position to do that, because we're still working on information that was provided by MOTA as they went around. The Blue Ribbon Committee heard a number of reports from people relative to those issues. But no, at this point, that's still in flux, and we have to do some serious talking with our planning partners over the next few months to make sure that we understand, because we can't actually be sure that what we heard at the Blue Ribbon Committee is what the planning partners actually wish to do and feel it's their priorities. Some of the items were personal and probably wouldn't rise to the level of being something that the planning partners would want to do.
Question for Bill. Is there anything, as your group went around the state, and listen to people. Did you hear anything that you would tell the commission's got to be on that list, or it's a dead duck before it ever gets to the polls?
Can you please step up to the mic?
Yes. I understand very well the way the department selects projects. It's a very in-depth process that involves planning folks all over the state. So what we heard as we went around the state was pretty much a list that was important to whoever happened to be speaking at the microphone. That helps because that kind of sets the parameters of how big the needs are, which, by the way, are much bigger than the $700 million that Rudy's talking about. But there is a process that MoDOT has that works very well. It's been working for the past 7 years through the Amendment 3, and it has a lot of input from local folks, and they prioritize what needs to be spent in their area. And the way the commission divvies money up, it goes through a formula, so each of the 7 MoDOT districts will know beforehand how much money they'll have in year 1, how much in year 2, how much in year 3, all the way through the 10 years, and they'll decide where that money needs to be spent. That's the best way to be inclusive, in my opinion, and for us to dictate through the Blue Ribbon panel would be hurting that process, and that process is very, very effective.
Bill, how will you counter the argument that this hurts the low-income people the most when you raise the sales tax?
Well, since, and I know this very well from 1997, sales tax isn't charged on food anymore. It's not charged on prescription drugs, which are 2 basic things that all Missourians need. So that argument, which used to really be prevalent years ago, I don't think is as important today. And no matter who you are, the sales tax is broad-based. Everybody that buys a shirt or anything else besides food and prescription drugs, that commodity got to them because of a good infrastructure system, and they'll all be paying, but they'll all be benefiting from it. I think a sales tax is probably the most fair.
Question for Mr. Meehan. Your organization handed out a release, I believe, yesterday after the news conference at the Capitol in support of the bonding program. I am going to assume by your presence here today that you have a position of support for this program as well, and obviously there could be some overlap. Is that a problem? I mean, where exactly does the chamber come down on funding highways and transportation?
There could be some overlap. Like Senator Keough said in our conference, there's a lot of discussions going on, and we'll have to see exactly what that final product is to take a look at. But we're absolutely supportive of the fact that transportation infrastructure will build our economy in Missouri. It's absolutely essential. And we've been having this conversation for a long time. What you're hearing today is very real action that the legislature's looking at, that will be in front of the voters to take a look at. And we like the conversation, so we're excited about the prospects that it has.
Which approach, though, does the chamber prefer, a bonding approach or a tax approach?
Really, we have to look at both of them. We supported the bonding proposal, but we're supporting investment in transportation. So it can come in different ways.
Would you prefer that the bonding proposal essentially go to building structures, and then something like this tax proposal go to the transportation issues?
We'll have to check that out, Bob, but the bonding proposal, we have a plank in our platform, if you will, supporting a bonding proposal at this time.
Representative Schatz,
Yes.
can you step up? Can you sell this to your chamber? Can you sell this to your constituents?
I'm very optimistic that we can. I think there's a great understanding if we're going to have job creation growth, and some of the key elements that we've talked about and what we're going to focus in on this is energy, and things that our caucus positions are. This is part of that. And so the best way that we can have job creation, job growth is having the infrastructure in place, low energy cost, and having access so that we can attract employers to our state. I do believe that we have to address this issue, and I think that we can. I think I'm very optimistic we can move this through. Working together with the Senate, I think we can make this happen. So I'm very optimistic.
You're not afraid of being accused of raising taxes?
Well, again, we're putting it to the vote of the people. And we're going to give them the opportunity to make that decision. So I think that's very clear. But I do think it's an issue that has to come before the legislature. We need to act on it and get it out to the people because we have transportation needs. If we're going to grow this economy in the state of Missouri and take advantage of our geographic opportunities that we have here, we've got to work on our infrastructure. And that access will bring job creators to this state, and it will take care of some of the problems we have.
Do you think that this plan is that the plan you would choose as far as addressing the transportation needs?
This would be my approach. I mean, I've looked at this a long time. The bonding aspect of it only prolongs the problem. There's no funding mechanism that allows it, to pay. Again, we're just borrowing money with no funding mechanism in place to pay off that bond. And so if we really want to address the need, we have to go about it a different way. Because we can see with the gas tax and how things and the diminished amount of gas is being purchased, and some of the mandates are coming down from the federal government as to the NP miles per gallon restrictions and things. We can only see that continuing that funding resource to go down. So there has to be an alternative to that. And I think that a dedicated sales tax obviously is a good way to have a steady revenue stream that we can count on, and we can maintain our roads and bridges as necessary.
Senator Keough, when do you intend to file this, and how many co-sponsors do you have lined up?
We are kind of drafting the legislation now. We're working with a lot of the stakeholders, industry partners, and making sure that we put the right piece through. I'm happy to have Senator McKenna's son, Ryan, has been very involved, as Representative Henson has been on the House side, and Representative Schatz. We're thinking in the next maybe 10 days or so. We're trying to fine tune a few pieces. I've talked to many of my senators, I think, in the House and the Senate. Both Speaker Jones and Senator Dempsey have said for months now that building and infrastructure is something that they're interested in doing, and this is a piece of that conversation. That's not to say that either one of those are signing on or supporting anything, but in general they say that they want to support infrastructure development. I believe there's a lot of folks on the Senate side that will want to support the same.
Is your toll road proposal dead?
Well, the toll road conversation is really how we got here. That's what started last year, as you know, and it really brought the level of Missouri's transportation needs up to a level that the public starts seeing and reading about it. About 60% of Missouri's population lives within 30 miles of I-70, so when you start talking about tolling I-70, although the concept is a good way to possibly pay for infrastructure improvements, a lot of people weighed in and said, hey, we know there's a problem. Let's look at all the different options and solutions that are out there. So from that conversation, we led to this potential funding mechanism.
Given the pressure to reduce income taxes, do you think you're going to get wedded to any offsetting tax cuts?
Well, Senator Lamping, as you may know, has a proposal out there that is a half-cent dedicated sales tax with an offsetted income tax cut out of GR, so that's a conversation that's going on. But as Chairman Farber said, the good news is a lot of people are talking about trying to figure out a way to fund transportation. So I'm sure all these conversations will work their way through the legislature, and representatives and senators will figure out what they think in their leadership position is the best thing to move forward for the state.
Is there a danger there will be too many options and you can't settle on any one of them?
No, I don't think that. I know all the people who have talked about the different proposals. They're aware that I have a concept of this proposal, and the conversations have been very productive, very forthcoming. I really like the makeup of the House and Senate this year with folks that are actually working together to move things forward. I mean, we've talked about jobs and infrastructure for years now, and I think everybody is ready, as well as the citizens are ready to turn that into action.
Are there major differences in what you're planning to file and what is in front of us here? As far as
conceptually, I don't think there'll be major differences. As Senator McKenna, Commissioner McKenna said, our proposal would be, the 1 cent sales tax in general. A piece of that would go back to cities and counties for them to use for transportation-related projects. It would not be a tax on food or prescription drugs. and it would have a sunset component to it. So I call it a limited time investment to the infrastructure needs. It would have a reportability, accountability piece to it where MoDOT would have to report to the legislature, to the governor on how these projects are coming. And it would also include maybe a component that we've learned through the Blue Ribbon panel and some of the polling data we've received that would freeze the gas tax. So Missourians would know during this 10-year period, the legislature, our governor, elected officials couldn't go and raise the gas tax as well. It would be an agreement to freeze that. So there's some safety provisions in there, some good consumer protections, and I think some real deliverables for Missourians to enjoy.
Do you support Senator Schaefer's separate bond issue for buildings, or could that detract from getting this enough support for
No,
this?
I think those are companion conversations. Again, both of those things lead to infrastructure improvements. One's horizontal, one's vertical. Senator Schaefer and I have a lot of conversations about this. Obviously, one of the projects Chairman Farber talked about, I-70, runs right through his district. But his bonding proposal mainly is intended for vertical structures, whether that be buildings on various universities, parks, mental health facilities. Fulton would be a good example. State capital improvements. Those are the types of bonding ideas that he has in that proposal.
Was that a yes?
What's that?
Do you support that?
Yes, I do support that. I think the time is right for that. I think the bonding costs are incredibly reasonable, and construction costs, construction companies, whether it's vertical or horizontal, are very aggressive. When I was on the commission, a $10 million project might have 2 or 3 bidders on it. Now I would say they have 12 bidders, maybe 16. So there's people out there that really want to work. And so I think you're going to get the best value for the citizens right now in both of these proposals, whether it's Kurt's bonding proposal or a potential funding for transportation.
Can they both win voter approval?
Well, it gets to be a crowded ballot, doesn't it? But I think as the conversations unfold, Missourians will figure out what they want to do. Obviously, a bonding proposal is funded through current GR. They'll obviously use the existing funds they've been using for the fourth state bond that they're just paying off now. So that won't be a tax increase per se to the voters. We'll be using existing resources and general revenue to fulfill the obligation of those bonds.